Hello, everyone. Welcome to Challenging Your Status Quo, the go-to podcast for those seeking success that resonates on every level. Our guide on this journey to success is J.A. Dava, co-founder of Latreia Coaching and Consulting. Each episode, we challenge you to step outside your comfort zone in redefining holistic success. Because in order to truly excel, one must rise in all aspects of life: spiritual, physical, relational, and philanthropical. So buckle up. Let's explore how your vocation and well-being can harmonize perfectly. And give a warm welcome to the host of Challenging Your Status Quo, J.A. Dava.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 1 of Challenging Your Status Quo. And what a great way to start it off. My guest, just a tremendous individual. And as we all know, that when you join and you're listening into Challenging Your Status Quo, we always start off on the vocational side of things, right? But we truly believe here at Latreia that vocational success means nothing at all until you start to focus on other things that create who you are holistically successful. So you can be successful vocationally, that's great. But if you're missing any of these 5 components in your well-beings, then there's something missing. And that is your spiritual well-being. Do you have a focus on that? What about your relational well-beings, your family, your relatives, your friends? Those are just as important. Then there's the mental well-being, correct? And then there's the physical well-being. And then finally, there is this thing called the philanthropical well-being, which is really what you do with the blessings that have been given to you. Sometimes all of those people come to me and they'll talk to me about becoming vocationally successful, coach them. But then I come to find out that I'll end up crossing over into other well-beings because that might be the limitation that you have to be able to achieve your success. So welcome to Season 4 of Challenging Your Status Quo. And today it's going to be just a great way to start it because you know what? I want to be able to introduce someone to you that really has climbed in. It isn't just a matter of landing there, you know, kind of like with that silver spoon. So we want to be able to look at the whole picture and be able to say that this person has proven themselves, have been in the industry for 30 plus years, and can easily take over the show and just let's go with it, right? But hey, friends, I do welcome you back to Episode 1 of Challenging Your Status Quo. This is where we sit down with people who didn't just build their careers, they built courage. People who chose the hard road when it mattered, who challenged the limits and rewrote the labels and walked out their calling, honestly, with intention. Today's guest is one of those people. She's a leader, she's a builder, a mentor, and an author of a powerful book I believe a lot of you might have read already, and it's called We Got This, A Guide to Securing Your Greatest Future. Erica Acie is head of retail originations for a major bank. But honestly, her story is not just about a title, it's about transformation. It's about influence. It's about doing the internal work so you can lead from a place of truth and purpose. So with that said, I just want to be able to bring on Erica Acie. Erica, I'm honored to have you on.
I am more honored. Thank you, J.A. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I love the introduction. You are so on point. Our mental state matters. Our emotional state matters. How we connect with people matters. Everyone wants to feel like they matter, right?
Yes.
And we own a lot of that ourselves. And
Yes.
So we control our happiness. We're responsible for our own happiness. So thank you for having me on.
You are very welcome. And Erica, you know what? I just always want to start this off by making it really personal because when I met Erica, I've known a lot of people in your organization. And when I met you, even just the short bursts of conversations you and I would have, you held me accountable in more than a couple different ways. And one of which, and I think I mentioned this to you already, is that I've never been a marathon runner, so to speak, right? Or someone who competes in a marathon, things like that. So I was never really a runner. And I remember just the way that I expressed myself, because I've run 12 marathons. And so for me to say I'm not a marathon runner is really
Right.
crazy. And I remember introducing that because I've always had it in my mindset that, hey, listen, I'm not a runner. And I remember you just coming up to me and going, what are you talking about? Right? What are you talking about? And so, and I'll tell you what, it's made a big, huge impact, and it made a huge impact in my last marathon as well. So I want to thank you.
I love that. Yes, you are a marathoner.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
and you just gotta have to admit that. And I think that leads us very well, right, into what we're really going to be talking about. But before we even do that, before we really even kind of talk about the mindset, let's start where most people overlook things, especially when they read someone like Erica and a title, right, that comes with that. And so can you tell me a little bit about your climb, so to speak, and just tell our
Sure.
audience who you are?
I'd be happy to. I mean, a title is just a title, right? And it comes with a lot of responsibility. But I will tell you, way back in the day, and you did mention 30 plus years in this industry, so you're aging me, JA. But yes, that is absolutely true. Starting out in this industry was in Columbus, Ohio, and I started in a file room. I was a file clerk, believe it or not. And I actually loved that job because I helped people get what they needed very quickly. And so the reason why I use that example is because there is not one role that I've had where I didn't try to do it in excellence, regardless of the title of the role, right? And so my behavior was noticed, and I was quickly moved into leadership at a very young age. I'll never forget, I was the leader of micrographics. Oh my gosh, do you remember micrographics? You think about technology today.
Now you're aging me as well, by the way. So thank you. Well, thanks for the return on that.
Oh, you're quite welcome. And most of my team was much older than me. And I knew that I had a lot to learn. So that was a lesson very early on, was to be observant, be respectful. And that's why I say it's just a title, because the title really doesn't matter. What matters is how you interact with people, what you learn, and what you teach. And so I quickly kind of escalated in my career through leadership of servicing. Then I went into sales as a loan officer. And then I realized how much I loved process engineering. I loved to figure things out. And so I went back into operations, actually spent time in private banking, and then also became a compliance officer. And I know, right? And then spent more time in ops. And then, as you know, moved into leading all of sales. And so what I would say is, over my journey, I've never been afraid to take on a new challenge. I have lived in 5 states. I've moved 11 times, and I raised a family. And I went to school and worked full time. So that was my climb of not being afraid of the hard work and really making sure that I allowed people to pour into me while I poured into other people. And just being so grateful for every opportunity. And so when I was asked to take something on, it may have been a lateral move. It may not have come with an increase, and it may not have come with a bigger title. But for me, it was more about, what can I learn at this particular time? There's a reason that I'm here. This pain is for my destiny. And a lot of times people don't realize that. They just expect to get there. But there's a reason why you go through the mess, right? Because it helps you along the journey. So that's just very quick, not mentioning companies, but just kind of the positions and the environment that I've been in. 5 states is a lot. And through those 5 states, every place that I've lived has come with different culture, different speed of pace, And I think that is what has really helped me be a dynamic leader. But had I said no to those opportunities, had I stayed still, had I not had the courage to leap and make moves, I would not be where I am today. So that is a profound message for anyone who is trying to navigate their career. Don't think too much about the barriers. Appreciate the barriers, because that's what makes you stronger. When you think about how to go over, through, and around those, you're building courage, but you're building knowledge, you're building strategy. All of those things help you excel. Very long answer, apologies, but just wanted to stress those points.
It's not, but it needs to be stressed, right? Because I think many times, right, Erica, when people meet you, they meet you and take you for face value of where you currently are now. And it's so much more than that. Because it is one thing to be at a place, and I'm sure you haven't landed. You feel like you haven't landed, because otherwise you'd be retiring, right?
That's right.
Once you landed. So I feel like you're still moving. And first of all, I got to get back for just a second and say, we were that close. How did we not? Maybe it's because you were in the basement of a bank and I was out and about because I'm in Columbus, Ohio.
Yes.
Doing my work in Columbus, Ohio. So how you and I never came together, and I've been in the industry for 30 something years too, but by the way, so, but with all that, what I love about that story is that you didn't just climb, you grew. And that's really what this particular podcast is going to be about, because you made choices that weren't always popular, right? They could have, but they were necessary. Like you said, 5 states and all of those kind of things that you're talking about. But what would you say? Because I think it's important to kind of separate that right now, because we have executives that are here, but they need to hear this as well, because they need to hear it to talk to people about it. But what would you say to the young professionals who's in that so-called basement season, right now, wondering if they'll ever get out?
So the very first thing I would say is have a vision for your life. And the very first chapter in my book is be honest with yourself.
Yes.
You have to really know what it is that you want. Now, I'm not suggesting that every last detail needs to be outlined, but you need to have a vision for your life and a vision for your family. Whatever choices that you're going to make from that perspective, have a vision. I truly believe in manifestation. That is not something that's made up, right? And what you tell yourself matters, which kind of goes back to the marathoner. And everything that you tell yourself, you're listening to. And if you're telling yourself lies, negativity, that is the world that you're going to sit in. But if you are telling yourself what your vision is, which is the truth, because that's what you are declaring, you will start to see things come in your path to help you get there. And that is really important. So it really starts with being honest with yourself and the language that you use with yourself. And I learned that at a really young age. And I had a very trying childhood. I never felt like I fit in, right? So I'm multi-ethnic, and that has helped me a lot in my career. I can relate to anyone's background. But at a young age, that was very trying because I never felt like I fit into any group. Because people always had these expectations. You have to look a certain way. You have to speak a certain way. And JA, for me, going through those trials and tribulations, I learned that all that matters is if I fit in with me.
Yes.
And that's where the manifestation really started. I had a vision for my life. And I also understood why people were the way that they were because I lived in those circles. And so you heard me mention earlier, observing is so important. When you start observing people, you start to understand their fears. And at a young age, I realized that a lot of those fears were superficial. And I knew that that's not the path that I wanted to go down. I knew that there was something greater for me because there's greatness in me. And I believed that to my core. And that really helped design my path forward because I knew I deserved it, I wanted it, and I knew I was worth it. So for the young folks starting out in your career, know what you want, be honest with yourself, and know that you deserve it. and don't stop for anything, go after it. It doesn't mean instant gratification. What it means is be grateful for the lessons along the journey and know that you're going to get where you want to go. You have to believe it. If you don't believe it, it won't happen and nobody else can believe it for you.
That's the truth, honestly. And you know what I love with something that you're saying, and to the audience, please yield to this, right? And it's actually how I like to open my coaching sessions. And when I'm talking to leaders and, consulting, I always start out in the vision part of it, right? It isn't about the numbers. It isn't even about the volume and the units and all of those kind of things. We start with the vision. And what I loved about it is that you talked about, have a vision for not only yourself. So some people that are listening to this thing are still single, right? And they're not married yet and everything else. But if you're already married and everything else, you don't just create a plan for you at this point. There's family to think about, right? And
That's
where
right.
you want to go. And it starts there. And then you got to be able to make sure that it actually fits in the culture of what you're trying to do from your vocational perspective, right? And so, because that's going to be your biggest drive. And generally speaking, our vision is much bigger than what companies will ever think you need to bring to the table by the time
Very
it's all
well said.
right. And so so thank you for sharing that. But I do want to kind of talk about that because let's talk about what it really took, right? The internal part, because I read in your book that the journey isn't just about ambition, but it's about identity. And you talk about shaking off labels, and you kind of already alluded to that because I fit into that same role, by the way, right? Talk about shaking off labels, being called too aggressive, too bold, too collaborative. I mean, it's a makeup of a whole bunch of different things. And notice, I didn't even talk about what the surface stuff is, right? And all in the same breath. So with those labels, which of those labels really hit you the hardest, and how did you let go of it? Because it didn't just come to you. But
it's a great question. And I appreciate the question because there were a lot of labels. There are still labels today, right? And from an ethnicity perspective, from a gender perspective, a couple of them are feminist, too much of a feminist, too aggressive. And what I've learned, JA, is that people project their fears onto you.
Yes.
And it could simply be something that they don't understand. And so that fear causes people to cast aspersions onto you. It causes them to be unsettled. And based on how someone was raised, again, my family is very diverse from a socioeconomic perspective, from an ethnicity standpoint, and being in conversations and observing, people have a point of view. People rely on stereotypes. And I'm such a judge-free person. Everybody has judgment. We're human. Right. But in terms of someone's orientation, their background, I'm really kind of judge-free because for me, it's more about the human essence of the individual. Are they kind? Do they care? Do they practice gratitude? You know, some of those core values that are important to me, that's what I lean into.
Yeah.
And so I say all that to say, as I've been labeled throughout my career, I instead have tried to have the compassion to understand the capacity of their mindset. And when you look at things in that way, you don't have the energy to be combative. You have the energy to find common ground. And when you find common ground, more times than not, you're changing that person's perception of whatever stereotype it was that they came to you with, if that makes sense. So I don't feed into the negativity, that side of it. I continue to be me because I'm comfortable in my own skin. Now that took time. That didn't happen right off the bat. And I'll explain that in a second. But I'm comfortable with who I am. And so when I get met with resistance or I get met with labels, my energy is better served helping that person understand who I am and to give them clarity. And so growing up in very different environments, I could see the fear. I understood the fear. And so I didn't let that dictate who I am.
Mm.
When you see it from different viewpoints, and I think I had an advantage in that, when you see it in that way, you realize that you're not the problem. The problem is how people have been raised and what they've been taught. And I just chose not to feed into that because I love all people. I never chose a side of my family, even when a side of my family didn't necessarily choose me. That was my choice. But I think you have to have the capacity to understand where people are and where they came from. That compassion is so important because what it does is it provides empathy versus providing anger. You have to understand people and meet them where they are.
Yes.
And not take it personal.
Yeah.
Because it's not about you. It's more about them than it is about you.
Yeah, it's their insecurities more
Yes.
than anything else, right? I mean,
Right.
it truly is. And so you said something, by the way, that I wanna explore for just a sec because
Sure.
I understood it, but I want you to try and explain it a little bit. You said I kind of have an advantage. What is that advantage that you're talking about?
That advantage is I understand people. I understand human behavior. And that helps break down walls.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people only understand where they came from, right? But because I come from such diversity, and by the way, this is why diversity is so important in our country, because I came from that. I understand people at a different level than just bucketing all people into one category. That is an advantage. And that's why business is more successful from a strategic perspective when there's diversity at the table. If everyone at the table looks alike, sounds alike, talks alike, right, you're not going to win.
Yes.
You just simply aren't. You don't have diversity of thought.
Yeah. And you know what? You know what I like that about that even more is that, when you're talking about an advantage, you could have learned it in school, and you probably did. There's psychology classes, there's all sorts of different things like that come into play, civics classes, all of the above, but you lived it,
I lived
right?
it.
You lived it. And instead of making yourself a victim of it, right? You embraced it and said, I'm going to use it for my strength. Because
Absolutely.
it's a real study of human behavior, because it's looking you straight in the face. And that is an advantage. It's an advantage that is something that we should embrace, being given that, yeah, if you're a minority, I mean, there's so much about it. Having moved to this country, barely even speaking a language that was so different for me. Learning formal English is totally different than slang English, and just not fitting in and all those kind of things could have been used for the wrong things. But instead, understanding what you had to go through and now utilizing it, you didn't let self-doubt
No.
and imposter syndrome, which is a fairly new word by the time it's all said and done, right? Self-doubt, imposter syndrome, burnout, all of those kind of things. It just didn't become an excuse with you. At least it doesn't seem like that.
It couldn't.
Yeah.
So it's not just that it didn't, it could not. Because that would not have aligned to my vision and what I saw for me in my future. And I made a commitment to myself very early on. I always knew I wanted to have a family, but I knew that I wanted to raise my family different than how I was raised. And I think we all have those notions, right? We all grow up and we see our environment and we say, I want to make sure that I don't do that with my kids, or I want to make sure I do that with my kids. Even with our bosses, we probably learn more of how not to lead than how to lead from folks that we've worked for. At least that's my story, right? So when I say I've observed, I pay attention to all of those things because it's so important when you really start to analyze who it is that you want to become. So I did that very young. And that has just continued to be something that I hold near and dear, that I can quickly assess, observe situations, take in what I need to be strategic and to win, and not get drained in the negativity and the things that don't serve me well.
Yeah. Yeah. So does that necessarily mean on your side of it, especially in the position that you're in right now, where you're leading a lot of people, you lead people, you influence people, and you also have people that influence you, right?
Absolutely.
And in your climate and everything else. But the empathy just has to really kick in. And so do you find that a lot of how you lead people today is because of how you don't want to be treated and vice versa?
Absolutely. It's a
Right?
great point. And yes, I really do have empathy towards everyone. But I will also share with you and laugh at myself a little bit here that the empathy is to an extent. And what I mean by that is I don't allow myself to be consumed with other people's challenges and problems.
Right on.
And that's really important because if my cup's not full, I can't continue to serve others. I'll be depleted. Instead, I think as a leader, what you have to do is show empathy and clarity, understanding. What can I do to help you? I immediately kind of move into action mode. Unless you tell me that you're not looking for help with a solution, you just want to be heard, I can absolutely do that as well. And oftentimes I will ask that question, am I here to listen or am I here to solve? But once you get to that point, you have to then let it go. And I see a lot of leaders who will consume themselves so much with everybody's problem to a fault. And as leaders, we are here to influence and guide and provide support. But then you have to let that go and you got to keep moving on to the next thing. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have the compassion or the empathy for that individual, but you're there to assist and they have to take that on and solve it for themselves, ultimately, at the end of the day. And so as I'm leading my team, I'm listening to what the needs are. Let me figure out how I can remove some of these barriers to help you win. But ultimately, at the end of the day, for your vision, you got to carry that torch forward. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, 100%. And I mean, and that's a great life lesson that you just said, by the way, that most leaders should really listen to. And that is when you said, am I here to listen or to solve? Right? Leaders don't ask that question ever. They don't even ask themselves that question. They just get to a point where all of a sudden they make a decision to not even listen and just start jabbing, right? They just go. And they've never even listened. Somebody just doesn't, they're not looking to be solved. And so it's not a problem to be able to say, am I here to listen? Or do you want me to solve it with you? And then maybe able to work that way. And then when that time comes, then you still have to stay within the boundaries of what you have to help that person achieve their visions as well, right? And so, so you're right. You can't just get absorbed by the listening aspect of it. And now you're living it out with them and kind of wallowing. I call it the Eeyore syndrome, right? And it's like, then you have to be able to help others as well, but not necessarily solving, but helping others as well to that point. You actually do that. Erica, you do that extremely well because you've said it to me a couple of times, is that because yours and my coming together had everything to do with the new tools called AI and kind of what today's teachings are. And then we're a huge believer that AI is evening out a lot of the so-called intellect level of who we are, but the EQ level is what, people are starting to miss, right? They can be intellectuals now, but the EQ level, if you don't have that, then you're missing a component of full success. But at the same time, and I remember you saying this, you said at the same time, we can't wallow on the EQ side of things. There really is a balance between the two. And you've got to be able to figure that out. So great tip on that. Am I here to listen or to solve? Why not ask that question? Right. to your team, how much more appreciative will they be at that moment anyways? And you also, in your book, by the way, which I'll go ahead and kind of schlep that on the bottom of the screen here. We Got This. Okay. Erica authored this book, A Guide to Securing Your Greatest Future. One thing that hit me hard in that book and in your one of the stories is about that single mom.
Yes.
Do you remember what I'm talking about here? Single mom of 3, I believe, right? That's what it was. Sitting across the table at closing and just weeping because she never believed she'd own a home, right?
That's right.
That moment stuck with me because not only are you living out, by the way, because how many closings have you been involved in, right?
Oh my gosh.
Right? Tons.
Thousands and thousands, yes.
And so that moment stuck with me because it's at that moment, it became more than a mortgage. There it is. It's not just the units and volumes. It became a ministry and it became a purpose for you. So what did that moment mean to you? Can you share that, or is that just read the book?
No, I absolutely would be happy to share that, because before that moment, I had my own moment with my mother helping us get our first home. And I could not believe for the first time that I had my own room and didn't have to share and felt so safe and secure. So when we bought our first home in a very small town of Piqua, Ohio, probably a city most have never even heard of, it was so meaningful to me because it was the first time I really felt safe. And when I met this family and helped them close on their very first home, help mom, and I saw her eyes fill up with tears, my subconscious mind and program went right back to being that afraid little girl who felt safe for the first time and having her own room. And so that heart connection for me was real. And it filled my spirit, number one. Number two, that fulfillment of helping someone else, right? Feel that safety. It meant the world to me. And from that moment on, I knew this is what I wanted to do with my career. I love the dream of homeownership. I love helping people understand how real estate really is kind of the foundation for generational wealth. I love helping people simplify such a confusing process, but more importantly, for them to know that they can have a home. We can make it happen. We might have to do some coaching, which is why I'm so knee deep into outreach opportunities, financial wellness. That's near and dear to my heart because knowledge is power. Yeah. And the more knowledge that we can give someone, the more we can empower people to really know what they're capable of. So it's really gone full circle for me. But that moment connected me to my own previous memory of feeling safe for the first time.
Do you know how powerful those words are? Because honestly, and you said it again, it's what set your career, right? And because honestly, as you're saying that, and as you're connecting those, yeah, I believe you were building a career, but so much more than just building a career. What I really read from your words in your book, as well as just knowing you a little bit here and there now, is really about lifting people up, right?
Yes.
And I can't begin to tell you how many times people will kind of smirk or laugh. And when they coined the phrase, I'm here to help fulfill your dream of home ownership. To you, that's real.
Yeah.
Right? But so
that's
many
heart
people,
and mind.
Yeah, people in our industry, I can't begin to tell you how often that becomes a laughing point because they don't believe that, right? Because I think people need to listen and yield to that, because I think that's what will help you. Even that could be the limitation of somebody's success. Is if they don't believe in what they do, they'll be mediocre in just about everything that they will do in this industry.
That's right, because that fire isn't there,
Yeah.
right? Like that built fire for me. And I
Yes.
wanted more people to feel that. When
Yes.
you have a moment in your life that's so impactful, so pivotal, and you can connect it to your purpose, that's fire.
Yeah.
That's absolute fire. And with that fire, you have momentum, you have the energy, you're going to keep going. You might get knocked down 20 times, but you're going to get up 20 times. You're going to keep going. And it gets me excited, JA. I mean, I love this industry. I love what it's all about, but you
Yeah.
have to want it. You have to feel the passion, the connection to people. Money is money, right?
Yes.
And I left corporate America for about a year and a half when my mother was diagnosed with cancer. I didn't know she was going to make it. I'm the only child. And I said, I can always go make more money, but I can't replace my mother, right? And so my life journey is all about what really matters to me. And if you're doing what really matters to you, what fills your spirit, what fills your cup, the
Yeah.
money will come. If you are just artificially doing something and you don't have fire, you don't have passion, you likely are going to find yourself dipping your toe in a lot of different areas, which is energy, it's time. Listen, we don't know how many summers we have, right?
That's for
You
sure.
end up exerting a lot of time versus doing something that you love and excelling at it. That's the difference. And that's why whatever you're doing, make sure your purpose is aligned to it. That is so critical.
Absolutely. And I have no doubt in my mind, by the way, and you've not, you've alluded to it, but you've not stressed it. But, you tend to, when you're putting yourself into your career and you're lifting people up, the tone that I hear and the tone in the book, and that's why I think everybody should read it. I don't care if you come from the silver spoon life or the hardships of life. What I love about it is that, you care about folks who've been overlooked.
Yes.
And way too often in our industry, that is there, but people don't want to dig far enough into that. And so they get bored and they get burnt out of our business because they're not putting themselves into a position of fully understanding. We've got an incredible career opportunity in the mortgage industry, and it's people's largest investment they'll ever make, generally speaking, is going to be on housing. And you get to walk somebody through that. How often I coach people and I'll say, you know what? Sometimes it ends with me saying the reason why you're not succeeding because you don't believe in what you're doing, honestly.
Yeah.
Right? And so
That's
that
so profound.
yeah. But you say it. So, man, what's one way? Just listening to all this, and not like I'm going to corner you into one way, right? But what's one way we can all get back right where we are, not necessarily waiting to have arrived, because I truly believe you haven't arrived.
No, I
I'm
haven't.
excited to see where that arrival is going to be, by the way. But but what's one way we can all get back right where we are now, based on your book, based on your vocational pathway? Could you even answer that question right now?
For me, it's all about planting seeds. It's really simple to me. I try to plant seeds every day. And what I mean by that is being kind to people. I was just in the mall trying to catch up on holiday shopping. I haven't really done a great job, but I noticed this woman and she just looked stressed. And I just happened to walk up to her and say, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And she just looked at me kind of like, "Who are you?" And I said, "I just want you to know that I want you to have more joy than you can handle. Have more joy than you can handle. This is going to be a great holiday season." And I had no idea who she was, what her background is, what she was looking kind of stressed about. And the smile on her face. And she said, "Oh my God, darling." And she said, "Can I give you a hug?" And she just gave me the biggest hug. She said, "You have no idea how much I needed that."
Yeah.
And it's the simple acts of kindness
Yeah.
that go so far. And you know what, JA? It probably made me feel better than it made her feel. And just being kind to people, plant seeds. That seed that I sowed with her, I have no idea how that materialized, but I bet you it did. I bet you any amount of money, she returned that kindness to somebody else.
Yep, because she had an example for it.
She had an
Right.
example.
Yep.
And in the workplace, I mentor a lot of people. That is my way of planting seeds.
Yes.
I elevate people. I'm always trying to figure out how I can return the kindness that's been given to me, always paying it forward. And that fulfills me, but it does exactly what you just asked.
Yeah. Wow. I love everything about this, right? And the thing is that it is, especially in our industry, because it can be a very ugly industry, right?
It can.
And it can be an incredibly rewarding industry, and there's some incredible people in our industry. And the common bond and the common theme of that is what you're talking about now. So I want to be able to tell people that your business, sure, comes down to units, comes down to volume, it's got all of the above, because it's what, you know, you work for somebody or you're working for yourself, but that whole vision, you know, just captures everything that we stand for at Latreia. And so I know that there's another side of you even that we haven't even started to really kind of dive into, which is really the philanthropical side of you, right? And so I'm going to ask you, because believe it or not, we've been talking for 40 minutes.
Oh my gosh, time rolls, doesn't it?
Right? It does, right? And that's such I love when that happens, because there's at least 3 times that time that we could be talking, because there's so many topics. We even talked about the spiritual side of what happened. You alluded to it. I'd love people to hear that, because that's such an important thing. Relationally, you touched it, you know, and so relationally, they matter to you, right? And so people matter to you physically, you know, I know. And yet there's so much more that you and I could be talking about. But as we wind down, because I promised you I was only going to try and steal maybe 45 minutes of your time. Can I ask you just some really quick questions and see how you fill the blank? And let's go with that, and let's just see it. And so let's shift gear a little bit. Let's have a little fun. I'm going to throw a few things, and you just go with what comes to your mind. All right?
Okay. So, goodness. All right. I feel like I'm on the hot seat. Let's do it.
You are on the hot seat. So at this point, you are on the hot seat. And based on everything that we've just been talking about, I'm very curious to know a belief you had to break up with. What's a belief that you had to break up with?
That I'm one-dimensional.
Wow. And that's a topic on its own, right? And here's the next one, okay? A risk that made you stronger.
A risk that made me stronger was leaving what was familiar.
Very true, right? Especially climbing.
Yes.
Now, here's the next one. Something about leadership we don't talk about enough.
Fear.
True.
Leaders have fear, right? And it's a matter of how we handle that fear. There are still a lot of things that I'm afraid of. Imposter syndrome is very real. Yes. But what matters is how you go over it, around it, and through it. You don't let it stop you.
Yeah, people think that facing fear means weakness, right?
That's right.
And it's just not. It's actually
not at all.
It's the opposite way. And hearing and sharing it with people, that fear, and especially if they're watching you overcome it, is so good, not only for yourself, but for the people watching.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So love that. All right, the next one. A moment that still brings tears to your eyes.
I'm going to have to go on the personal side with that one, J.A. I would say making amends with my father before he passed away. That was a big one.
Yeah. You and I have that in common. So someday we'll share that.
Yeah.
So we'll
it's
share
real.
Together.
It's real.
It is very real. All right. So here's the last one, and it'll be off the hot seat. Okay. One word you'd use to describe your life today?
Powerful.
That's awesome. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yes, I have failed so many times and I've won so many times, and I have been enriched by people who treated me well, but also people who did not. And all of that has built a powerful woman. All of my experience, all of those experiences have made me who I am today. And I feel more powerful today than I ever have. Power. And I am very, very disciplined around how I use my energy. So power is energy, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be thoughtful with how you use that energy, which ultimately is how do you use your power? And I want to use my power for good because that's what fills my cup.
That is awesome. Well, you're off the hot seat. I won't ask you anymore from a quick sense that way, but I'd like to end it with this. Okay. Whew, man, that went too fast, Erica.
It did.
Can I ask you back?
I would love to. Please. I absolutely would love to
influence people this way. But so here's what I want to end it with. I've always believed influence is really not about how many people follow you, right? But it's about how many lives change because you showed up. Okay.
Oh, say it again, J.A. That is so profound and so true.
Yeah. I've always believed influence isn't about how many people follow you, but how many lives change because you showed up. So leaders show up, right? But what kind of legacy, Erica, do you want to leave behind?
I want people to say, she is someone that lived her life out loud. She is someone that enjoyed life. She was willing to fail so she could win. And she cared about people. And she tried to bring folks along for the journey. That's the legacy that I really want to leave. That's what I talk to my kids about, my husband, my friends. I'm really blessed to have such fruitful friend circles. That's me.
Yeah.
That is the diversity of who I am. I try really hard to be a dynamic leader because I'm not one-dimensional. And through that, I hope that I can touch as many people as possible.
Yeah. It shows up that way, by the way, Erica. And I know I'm not just saying that because you're on the air with me, but it does show up that way.
Thank you.
Because I always find it to be a wholeness to it when people aren't just, I love Erica, and that's it. But I love Erica. She challenges me. And you know what? Sometimes we clash, but man, she's just heading in the right direction, right? And so you don't want to be the person that's just loved. And so people kind of get loving.
Right. That's superficial. You want the tangibles.
Yes. Yeah. So, and it shows up that way. And that's why I know how real it is. And that's why I wanted you on the show. Because honestly, Erica, like I said, you can be in a couple of other episodes, and I am going to call on you again and have you on the show because I truly believe this will make a difference to some of our greatest leaders that might just be missing this component.
Listen, J.A., we can't forget, sorry to interrupt you, but we cannot forget you're doing this for other people. This is selfless, right? This is a big investment of your time. This is your purpose, your vision. Yes. So thank you for all that you're doing because you didn't have to ask me to be here. You did, and I greatly appreciate it. But we can't minimize the impact and influence that you're having on people. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you very much. And so you are truly off the hot seat at this point. Okay. So I'm gonna say goodbye to our audience. And I'm just going to keep you on for just a second longer, just to kind of to talk to our audience and basically just say thank you so much. This is episode 1 of season 4, and there was no better person because I relate so. I think you're my first guest where there's so much crossover with what we've experienced, and someday we'll get to share that with each other, right? And
that's right.
It was truly a pleasure reading your book and understanding a little bit more about you And I hope that people also, it's on the bottom of the screen, guys. We got this, A Guide to Securing Your Greatest Future. Read it. It's well worth it. So hope you've enjoyed this episode. And Erica, I can't thank you enough.
Thank
I
you.
will see you again at the next one.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Take care.
You too.
And that wraps another episode of Challenging Your Status Quo. We hope you found inspiration and practical wisdom to carry into your daily lives. If JA has inspired you, join our community by subscribing to the podcast. Stay connected with us at latreacoaching.com and through our social media channels where the conversation and growth continue. On behalf of JA and his whole team, we thank you for listening and invite you to keep challenging the status quo in your own life. Until next time, remember, pursue excellence, live purposefully, and embrace holistic success. We'll catch you next episode.